Hello, my outstanding, inquisitive friends. I did a video about POV channel and him going out and finding these huge stone blocks. Well, I'm going to show you some other instances of similar situations. This is huge stone blocks. This is Devil's Tower. Now you see these little flakes coming off here, and see all that little wrinkle zone? That's called wrinkle. All right, now I have one here. It's exactly the same as that. And this is the wrinkle I have. Now, some of it is not wrinkled at all. It's just as flat as it, well, very, very flat, but it's still wrinkly. Now, this is the thickness of that wrinkle zone. All right, you see it? Maybe that's a better shot right there. You see it? That's the wrinkle zone right there. And it goes all the way around the whole thing, just as these do. And that's peeling off. And this, some could peel off. You could flake that off by chipping that right off of here. And that has been done in the past. But this is the wrinkle zone on mine because it died laying flat on one of these sides, probably that side. And this isn't too wrinkled up, but this side, well, none of them are really wrinkly. Anyway, this died and all that gooey stuff came down. That's what the wrinkle is. It's not that, it's a gooey stuff that's attached to the big fibers in here. And this is on Devil's Tower. It's right here on Devil's Tower. That's these fibers. And that's Devil's Tower. And you see where all this stuff, green stuff, is starting to grow down here? Well, why would you think that would happen? And look at the pattern down here. Look at how precise that pattern is. And all these little green spots here. I know why they're there. And here's the wrinkle zone up here. And here's that red spot. And that is an Achilles tendon. That's why they have the wrinkle zone at the top. Here's a different shot from it, which is what most people see as this one, or something similar to it. Same thing. See all the little green things growing around? That's the wrinkle zone at the top. You say, well, why would it only be at the top? Well, a tendon is like a rubber band, and they're heavy duty in the Achilles tendon. It's a gigantic tendon. Here it is right here. And what does a tendon do? It attaches the ball of your foot up to the muscle. So, and it's always pulling against each other. That's what keeps your foot together. And when you snap it, you're in trouble, and you get a wrinkle zone. Then you get your regular fibers. Then you get the ball of the calcaneus, which is this here, which is precisely what we see here. There's the Achilles tendon, there's the ball at the bottom, and these little red spots, green spots, are because that's where blood serviced the tissue that was above here. Just little tiny ones, blood vessels. And that's why all this stuff is green. Green grows into blood. And that's why whenever I see a landscape, I can tell almost right away, you know, you can see these little, as a matter of fact, in the video that I just did, the first thing I saw was skin. I'll show you. Okay, this is the POV channel again, and I look at these lines here, and this isn't a trail somebody put in here. These are abrupt transitions and changes, and as he gets deeper and deeper, there's just millions of them, literally thousands and thousands. Now, all of these little shrubs growing here are, in my opinion, growing into tiny little blood vessels, which are in the skin. And when I say skin, it's above that layer he was showing, which was this tendinous layer. And I believe, it appears to me, that this area was attaching from a aponeurosis tendon into red flesh. The red flesh has eroded away. The aponeurosis tendon is tough. So it maintained itself, although it's backing off, but and this is where he is, right at the edge where it's coming over. Okay, my friends, it just never gets any crazier. This is a layer of aponeurosis tendon, just as this is fascia, aponeurosis tendon, whatever you want to call it. There's a latch that latches flesh, which this is on top of some kind of other tissue. It's certainly not this going down that way. These are little blocks laying on top, just as this is on top of this flesh. That latch comes down over the top and locks in to the next piece it was attached to. In this case, I believe it was more muscle. This, I think, is muscle underneath here. And this is literally the same as this. We're not going to be able to see these little blocks, but I can see the waviness of this pattern. I'm going to put it in the microscope. I don't think we'll see it, but we might be able to see something here, which is a really gnarly spot, which they don't even know about in medicine. I call it the Spurlock. And it's right on the very end of the flap that attaches one organ or muscle part to the next. And it's that right there. And it has very, very tough, like very tough, right there. And this is where it anchors. That's the flap that allows it to sort of move around. But it is tough, tough, tough. That's why they can pull and do this and that, and it won't rip out. And this is the lock, the Spurlock. And then it comes down here to this side where it starts to flare out and gets that really skinny tissue. But at the very end, it's got a really anchor solid. That's it right there. That's the solid. And I think it's this right here. That comes over. Down here, there's nothing. There's no more big blocks of any of that stuff is gone. So it went right over and was supposed to stop in the meat, and everything eroded away and it left this. That's my opinion of right this now. Because there's flesh on this side and on this side and in the front. And there's a few of these blocks, but only a few. All right, I got my little piece of meat there in the microscope. Don't forget, I'm saying this wraps over and attaches to flesh. Well, here is what I'm saying is exactly the same situation. And this is that flap going over the edge and attaching to some more meat. Now, this is something they don't know about in medicine right now. These two holes right here. There's a layer of fluids in a membrane that surrounds every organ, your muscles, your tendons, everything. But that layer of fluids has to transfer into the next organ. It goes through these two spots. I renamed this the Spurlock. Well, it didn't have a name. I talked to people that do this, anatomy, sports people. They just say, yeah, it's just fashion. No. These two holes right here take the fluids from here and move it. Now, I was just looking a little closer, and I can see these little blocks, which are, I think, similar to what they had here. Now, I would love to be able to find those two little dots here. And I did find one on something very similar to this. I think it was that poor guy, Desert Drifter, that was killed in a car accident. Fabulous. He did the same kind of work as this guy. And, it's a terrible, terrible tragedy. But, and I believe, well, I know I did. He showed one that was coming up a hill, and right at going over the top of the hill, when I went up, I could find both holes, just like the holes right there, but on an enormous scale. You see those two holes right there? All right, now I'm going to go into get a little deeper in here. I think I can get the scope a little better to see that stuff. See if we can see any better blocks. But I can see, I know what it's doing right now. I can see the tendon. There's absolutely no question about that. And there's no question that that's meat. That's pretty meaty, as a matter of fact. You see that? Don't get much meatier than that. Here's the bottom. Anyway, it's meat, and that's all marbling, and the black is veins, and the red is just flesh, and the other stuff is connective tissue, the white. So anyway, that's my claim, is the Spurlock is a new bodily organ, just as the fascia is, which is where those two things drain. No, not the fascia. They call it interstitium. Oh, hold on a second. This to me is absolute smoking gun. This comes down and it's done. It's all over. There's no more of these chunks hardly at all laying in here. There's a couple here and there, but that's all. These are not, they don't erode. These are really, really tough blocks. They would be down, you'd see them all over the place if this had just collapsed. It did not collapse. These just stopped. And they will stop on an aponeurosis tendon when they hit the muscle, and then the muscle takes over. And that's exactly what I see here. And the muscles have the red blood in them, which gives you the green plant growth. All right, anybody who's been following me and knows about my no-toes, I have several different styles. This is the best one. It's exceptionally well preserved. And that is the tibia. And that's the cradle that it rocks in. And that is where the fibula was, and of course they just fall right off. This one died on that side. All right, this has springs in it which are of a different style. I believe that pin right there is the center of the springs, and they rock back and forth against this plate, which is basically just like the sole of a shoe. All right, so if you step forward, this would wrinkle up. That's why you see this. This is the wrinkle zone. And it wrinkles up, and it comes up, and these two balls push against each other, and the spring would load up this way, rocking against that pin against here. And they almost like flatten out, and then they come back to spring back to their shape. And that's how the tendons in your body work. They pull and tend, and they come right back to where they're supposed to be, because they're under tension. So that would work. I saw there's two spring-looking things rocking on that pin with these two balls, and anywhere where you see there's a wrinkle, that means there's been flex going on there. And there's flex going on here, because when he steps, that would go, and this is have to lift up in the front, which means it would twist up this way. That gives you that flex there. Wherever there's a lot of flex, you're going to see that kind of like a wrinkle in your arm and the crook of your arm, same sort of thing. But it's absolutely a foot. There's zero question about that. And I drilled a hole in there to try right into where the toenails would be, because that's where all your blood is going to be. And I can't get anybody to do any DNA tests. And that's our size, who knows what. Then Tish Egerton found this one here, and that's just crazy. That's two springs back to back. This one loads up, which pulls this one in, and that one loads up. This is the calcaneus back here to heel, and there's your tendon, and it breaks, and there's an abrupt transition there. I mean, it's just crazy. And she's got a whole batch of them. Same thing as here, is it breaks off with the fibula right there, and they're pretty much no toes. That's eroded, so you can see there's toes in these things. I'm pretty damn sure, but I'm not positive about mine. I'm pretty sure. All right, if this was human, which who knows what it is, I have no idea, but it's from a curly-haired creature. The flat piece at the top where the shaft comes up, if it's flat on one side, I'm told that's a curly-haired person. All right, there's the erector pili muscle, 2 inches wide. Now, the math comes out to be about 66 times bigger than a human hair. Again, I don't know what it is, but I don't think there's anything that's got a hair like that. Certainly not now. So now, 66 times bigger. Let's just, for kicks, think of it as a human hair. How big would that human guy be? All right, 60, let's just take 60 times 6 foot. 60 times 6 is 360 feet tall. 360 feet tall. That's good size. Now I have other ones and been DNA tested too. One of them has a 3-inch fingertip, 3 inches. And I go by 1 is my fingertip size basically. 3 inches is 36 inches. So that's 36 times bigger. So I figured it out to be close to 200 feet, 180 feet, somewhere around there. And that one was DNA tested, and it's flawless. You got the fingernail, the fingerprints, everything. All right, this is just too outrageous. This is the tibia, the big heavy-duty bone that comes straight down, and it's got a little thing that wraps around the edge when it hits the foot. Now, this one here is the second bone, which is the fibula. And that one there sits right on here. All right, you see it? And they just fall right off. There's nothing holding them. There's nothing really there other than some tendons that hold it on. This is an injury. Now, I don't care about the injury. What I care about is this. And this. This falls off. I don't have an issue with that, and you don't either. This is where that's set, right there. Well, what is this? What's going on here? Here it is right there. You see it? That comes over here, and that hung over the edge. If you look at it in the correct light, you can easily see it. That's the main bone, and this is what hung over. It has to, because it's still within the foot. It's not like the foot stopped here. So that bone up here is gone. So right from here, it's gone. However, the little claws that come down the side are still here. You see it? And then you get to the outside of the skin, which is out here. It's exactly what it is. So it just snapped off basically, but we still have that little stubborn that sticks over the edge. And normally that big bone would just come straight up. You have to look at things in the right light, with the right moisture, and you have to be able to see exactly what are you looking for. You got to have some kind of a plan to look for something. Okay, my friends, I got to this point where I was showing the tibia and how it folded over the edge, and we could actually see in this foot and so forth. And then the sound is not good in some of the following clips. Nothing I can do about it. So you have to turn it up real loud if you want to hear it. All right, sorry about that. You see, there it is right there. That is where the tibia comes down, and this is the round ball that sits in this socket. And these are the two little, well, this is the hangover part that hangs over right here. Which is this part. It's exactly what we're seeing here. And then you get to the point where the skin is out here. And this is, when I say skin, this is hide. I'll put it in the microscope and you see this. This is nothing more than like a leather hide, and it's not a shoe. It all comes together in the front with that little medallion right there. All this wrapping comes together. It folds together from every different direction. And that pin right there holds that whole medallion on top of it. so that it can jiggle around and it still stays on your foot. It's like it's really grip skin of the foot. And we have grip skin on our hands and feet. Only this completely covers everything of the foot. This is really heavy duty stuff. I'll show it to you. You see what? I'll show you. Alright, there's the foot in the microscope. Here's what it looks like on the surface. You see all those little black balls? Every one of those has a fiber attached to it. Now we're looking at it where you can't see any of the fibers, and I'm going to show you another leather object that's exactly the same. Now I'm going to move it to where you can see the fibers. Right there. You see down here? That section right down through there is where it bends. These are all the fibers in there that are attached to those balls. I'll show you exactly what we're looking at right now. We're looking at right there. That white looking line right there between the stuff that was just nothing but black balls and the stuff that looks like nothing but white fibers. You see where my fingertip is right there? That's what we're looking at, is those white fibers. Now, let me show you what this looks like. This is where you don't have all those wrinkles and everything, which is nothing but the black balls. Can I show you that in leather? I guess I absolutely can. And that's what this whole thing is made of, is this stuff. Now let me show you something that'll exactly the same, identical. Alright, remember I just showed you those balls and straps, the balls in the feet, and then those little fibers. Well, these are those white fibers. This is leather, and it's worked. It's rolled and stretched and pulled and tanned, and all the black balls are crushed. Now, I can show you where those white fibers are. Here they are right here. And you see them attached to these black balls? Every ball has one of these fibers. That's what's because leather, it's very, very tough. You see? This is right next to the belt loop, so, you know, they perforated it first of all, and it's pulling on it, so you end up seeing the fibers, and you can see how unbelievably, there's just thousands and thousands of strands, and every single strand, and every ball has a strand. That's how interstitium works. And if you come way away from it, all the way over to the edge where there's no pulling, it's just a big mat of that. But when it's alive, it can go this way and that way and this way, and it'll always come back because all those fibers are in that mat. Very, very tough stuff. Okay, we're going to take a look at what I call the Spurlock, and it has two little outlets that send the fluids from the fluid-filled highway, which has just been discovered. And this is in living tissue. It's the exact same latch. This is an injury. It's not supposed to be ripped. This is, you know, of course, a chunk of meat basically ripped out with this laying over the top. So in other words, this piece here, if you turn it around, it's this ripped away from its basement. So we have basically this with this, and then a chunk of meat underneath, which is this. That flap is this flap. Now there's a spot right here which is gnarly as hell, which holds this piece in, and this is right here in mine, and it's in the microscope right now. And I will show you that spot up close and personal. Now, I have to turn the light off to do that, but don't forget, we're going to be looking right back up here, which is the latch. This strap is very tough. It's extremely tough, and it's attaches to the next organ, and through it has to run fluids. And I'm going to show you that in a second. But let's look at the latch first of all, and then I'll show you how the fluids go. All right, it's in the microscope right now, and that's the picture of it, and that's where we're going to be looking. Now, it's in a Z microscope, and there it is right there. Now, those little two dots in the center, I'm not sure if they have anything to do with nerves or blood vessels. I'm not sure. But this is the engagement. Now, I am going to back out of here so you can see from up further. All right, let me put a little more light on here, obviously. Now we're backed off. And I gotta put more light on hold. Alright, let's look where we were before. There's a spot right there with the two little dots. And I'm going to roll it around so that we can see the front. It comes down to this little triangle. Remember I showed you that little flap? This is the anchor right here. And all of that really gnarly stuff, and that is tough, it runs down and would have attached to another chunk of meat that is now ripped away. It's completely ripped away, and all we have is this chunk of meat with its tendinous attachment on the top. Now, as I said, inside this is a fluid-filled highway just discovered. And all of this fluids come together in these little triangular looking things, just like that guy was walking on. And then they end up coming out through these two holes. Let me focus in on that. Well, you should be able to see that. Those two holes are where the fluids that were in this layer transfer into the next layer. And I have them from, I see this all over these things. Many, many, many times. And of course, this is just a chunk of meat with that latch right there. The same latch that we saw, I believe, hanging over the edge of that cliff where that guy was. And you see there's two different colors? Anytime you see two different colors, it means it's two different types of chemistry. They almost look the same, but they're not. Oops. Let's see if I can get down there. You see, they look very similar, but they're not the same. Two different colors. And this is when you can see it best, when you get the lower frequencies of light. It's quite obvious. There's something different between those two. It's not like they're exactly the same. And in the body you have veins and arteries. This is not blood. That is not from blood. That is from lymph fluids, which are in that layer. This is what's called the fluid-filled highway now. The interstitium is this. They don't even know about this medical doctors have no idea about this, or do the autopsy people or anybody. Nobody knows about it. And I was the one that discovered the interstitium, fluid-filled highway, that surfaces these tubes that have to run throughout the entire body. I wrote a paper on it in 2015 because of the fossilization. I knew it was causing the fossilization to be exquisite. I called it, well, hold on. All right, if you wanted to look up my paper about it, it's on academia.edu. It's called Fascia Facilitated fossilization, and that's the fascia layer. And I called it a fluid-filled tubular network that coats everything and comes together as one giant system in your body, which is separate from your blood. And I talk about how the preservation occurred due to this layer, allowing things to come in and go out just as they would have as a membrane. So filtering things in and out, and they became stable due to that effect of allowing things to come in and out of that membrane. And of course boiling of the waters and all that stuff. I detailed, well, you go look it up if you want to look it up. Academia.edu, and it's called Fascia Facilitated Fossilization. I got like 45 papers up on there. They won't let you post anywhere. They keep you down, and that's a nice place, but nobody really takes it for anything important. They always want to look to these big universities, which control what you say. If you don't say what they want you to say, well, you're done. I think that's been well established now. Hold on 1 second. We gotta take a look at one more thing. You see this? This is virtually identical to what you have here. You see how it splays out into that? That's right over the top, but there's still a layer there. It's just so thin you can't hardly see it. But once it gets down here, it gets really hard and tough. And once it hits that spot, that's that gnarly little spot in the chicken that you normally chew up and eat. It's just too tough. And it gets tougher and tougher until it hits that spot, which is this spot right here, the Spurlock. And underneath is just the flesh, which is this chicken flesh. This looks like something really red flesh. This is white chicken tissue. This looks like beef or something. But they all have that same latch, and I found it over and over and over in lungs and all kinds of organs. Every organ has its own fascia surrounding it, and it has to transfer its fluids out through those two little holes, just like this is. And I have a chicken. Well, hold on, let me see if I can find it. All right, just as a point of interest, that is the little thing that I'm talking about, the Spurlock, that latches all this fascia to the next body part. And then at the next body part is right there, connects to the next body part. And that is this right here. That's that little piece. There's one tube here and one tube here. This tube seems to have some kind of an organ attached to it. And this tube, I don't know, but this side has something extra attached to it. And that's what you see in those chicken tissue here. The two tubes come down and they transfer this fluid into the next organ, whatever it is. And there's got to be some little organ in there that says, well, I don't know if there has to be, but it looks to me there is. There's something that says the fluids that are going to leave from here to go to the next one are going to be filtered. Let's put it that way. There's probably going to be a different mixture of fluids in every different organ because they all have different chemistry to deal with. So there's either the same fluids and they deal with them somehow differently, or that little latch that I call the Spurlock filters some fluids out using some tiny little organ. I don't know. Well, that's all I can tell you. Because there's 200 types of cancer. Every single organ has its own type of cancer. Why? It's missing a certain fluid that another one doesn't, it needs a certain fluid, it doesn't have it to protect itself. That's why there's so many cancers. These are the fluids that protect everything. I'm going to just leave it at that. We got a lot more to go. I love you all. Bye.